Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really cool literary puzzle, using Eliseev's work to trace the roots of the medieval Korean novella.
So, let's get right to it. The big question we're trying to answer is this. What was the medieval Korean novella, really? It sounds like a simple question, right? But as you're about to see, the answer has been tangled up in history and language for a very long time.
And the biggest reason it's so complicated is that the words people use to describe these stories kept changing. There are these two key terms that have basically created a kind of literary fog around the whole subject.
Which brings us perfectly to our first section, a literary puzzle. This is where we'll dig into why pinning down an ancient genre is way trickier than you might think.
Okay, so here are the two culprits. On one side, you've got piasol. Originally, this just meant something like insignificant talk. Think of it as a collection of random notes or unofficial histories. But then you have sosol, which also started out meaning small talk, but later became the actual word for fiction or novel. You can see how, with such similar vague origins, things got messy real fast.
And look, this isn't just us centuries later getting confused. The source material makes it clear the historical terms themselves often get in the way. They can actually hinder rather than help us figure out what was going on. So in a way, the old labels are both our first clue and our biggest roadblock.
So to solve this puzzle, we have to rewind. Let's go all the way back to the beginning with our next section, the first Korean stories. We're going to hunt for clues in the oldest texts we can find.
This timeline is a great way to see how it all unfolded. Think of it in 3 acts. Act 1, from the 4th to 6th centuries, is the groundwork. Prose existed, but it was mostly for keeping historical records. Then comes Act 2, the blueprint phase, from the 12th to 16th centuries. This is when Chinese literary influence really kicks in and writers start focusing on plot. Finally, you get to Act 3, the masterpiece, a golden age in the 17th and 18th centuries, where the novella just explodes into a fully formed art.
And here's the first major twist in our investigation. The earliest clues we find aren't actually fiction at all. The DNA of the Korean novella is hidden in things like historical records and biographies.
A great example is the Samguk Sagi, the history of the 3 kingdoms. Now, its goal was to record history, but in doing so, it was also building the entire foundation for telling a good story. By writing about real events, the authors were creating a masterclass in narrative, basically creating the toolkit for all the fiction that would come later.
So, we've got the foundation. But how did we get from historical records to a full-blown literary genre? That brings us to Section 3, the novella takes shape.
This period was a total whirlwind of change. You have these sophisticated literary styles coming in from China, and they totally inspire Korean authors. Suddenly, it's not just about documenting what happened, it's about crafting a plot. You see this slow but definite shift from history to fiction. And for the very first time, you start seeing collections of stories that are held together by a real narrative.
And smack in the middle of all this change, one author stands out as a true game changer, Kim Si-sup. In the 15th century, he was the guy who basically built the bridge from the old historical style to the new world of fiction.
His collection, News Stories from the Golden Turtle, is really seen as one of the first works that has all the pieces of a true novella. It wove together reality and fantasy with a clear story arc in a way no one in Korea had really done before. You could say this was the prototype.
And once you have a working prototype, well, things are about to get really exciting. Welcome to the main event, Section 4, a genre's golden age. This is when the novella finally steps into the spotlight.
So what's the real difference between a true novella and those earlier anecdotes? It really boils down to 3 key things. First, an anecdote is static. It's like a snapshot of a single moment. A novella, though, is dynamic. It's the whole movie, showing change. Second, focus. An anecdote might capture one clever comment, but a novella dives into a whole pivotal event in someone's life. And finally, the purpose is just different. It's no longer just about a quick bit of entertainment. It's about exploring some deeper truth.
By this golden age, the novella had its own clear identity. It would zoom in on one critical episode. It brilliantly mixed everyday life with fantasy. Ghosts, dreams, that kind of thing. And for the first time, these stories really got inside characters' heads, exploring psychology and how people change. Crucially, they also became a powerful tool for social commentary, raising all kinds of new ideas about humanity.
And that creative tension was really the secret sauce of the mature novella. It was this amazing balancing act between 3 things: the gritty realism of daily life, the magical world of fantasy, and a sharp critique of the society and ideas of the time.
Okay, so we've defined it, we've traced its history, but why does any of this matter today? Let's wrap things up in our final section, why old stories matter.
Here's the bottom line. The novella was way more than just a new way to tell stories. It actually became a vessel for change. When you read them, you're literally watching Korean society and thought evolve right there on the page.
And this wasn't just some passing fad. We're talking about a golden age that lasted for 200 years. Think about that. 2 full centuries of incredible creativity that left behind this amazing library of stories, whose influence you can still feel in Korean storytelling today.
So, let's quickly recap what we've uncovered. We saw the Korean novella grow up over centuries, starting as simple records and blossoming into complex fiction. We finally pinned down a clear definition by seeing how it was different from anecdotes. We saw how it was this cool hybrid of Korean traditions and Chinese styles, and at its best, it was an incredibly sophisticated way to explore what it means to be human. Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. Those medieval writers were using a new form to make sense of their world. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The stories we're telling today, on screens and podcasts, all are new forms. How will people understand them hundreds of years from now?